Hello, everyone. I'm back. We have a very exciting conversation, a very exciting fireside chat that we're going to be talking about the impact of quantum. Just like any frontier technologies. Thank you so much, Ilyas. We were looking for you everywhere. I am so excited too. I would like to first of all introduce you to one of the leading figures in quantum, Mr. Ilyas Khan, the CEO of Quantinuum. And the conversation we're going to have today is very, very essential because like any frontier technologies, there is always a conversation about the impact, the true impact. So the name of this session today is Utopia or Dystopia. So I'm very excited to dive into a conversation. And I would like to start with the first question, Ilyas. Why are we here?
Well, first of all, before I answer the question, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for everybody who's here. It's a pleasure to be here. It's such a cool idea. Look, I think the reason we're here, Zina, changed kind of halfway through our very first conversation a few months ago. And originally, my idea, like so many of us, like Marcus and Esperanza, we're at so many of these conferences. And we do the same things. But the reason I think I'm here today is something that you seeded in my mind, which is that actually we really need to think about technology for societal good, not for anything else, at least for the next few moments. And if we can do that, maybe we've shifted the boundary of a dialogue. And I think that's why I'm here today. Quantum technologies, quantum computing, all of these different ideas that relate around the utilization of the laws of quantum mechanics for the good of society and not just parts of society is why I think we're having this conversation.
That's such an important and interesting perspective because it's all about impact. Anything that we do is about impact. Whether or not we think about it, whether or not we put it in those words, it is about the impact of our everyday work and our technologies on humanity and us building the next generation for our next level in civilization. And with that, so much conversation about quantum. What is quantum? And I don't want a technical what is quantum? What is the weight of quantum? What does quantum really mean for us and the world?
So luckily, Zina sent me these questions a few days ago. I don't know if I'm meant to tell you that, but she did. So I've kind of had a few, a few days to think about this. And she was very insistent, nothing technical, which is good because I couldn't anyway. So I think that my way of, I get asked this question a lot. And so I'll start with something which hopefully resonates with all of us. The nature of reality. So if you think of the broad stretch of humanity, from the very first time that something that was a proto-human looked up at the stars, his or her question was always about the nature of reality. So I was very lucky. Early in my career, I got to know one of the biggest minds of our generation, Stephen Hawking. I was lucky to be the chairman of the Stephen Hawking Foundation. Stephen became a friend. And so what I'm about to say about quantum computing is not my idea. I wish it was, but it isn't. It's Stephen's idea, and I'm really grateful to be able to share this. And Stephen's idea was this. So if you think back to recorded history, we think of something like Pythagoras. We don't know whether he actually ever existed, but we think he did. But the point is, there was a way of looking at the world, and that way was our reality. And then along came somebody like Kepler and Copernicus and Galileo, and we changed what we thought was the nature of reality. And then came Newton. And then for 300 years, we had a reality. And then along came Einstein. And then the quantum, the discovery of the laws of the infinitesimal. And suddenly, there's a new nature of reality. And that is what quantum computing is actually about. It is not a technology. We, all of us, especially the people who are younger, we are living through an industrial revolution. This is not just about a new technology. Of course, companies and entities will seek to benefit, as will governments. Zena, when is the last time that government after government after government had a national program for a technology development? It has never happened. China, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, Spain. Countries have national programs. Why? Because they see something. This revolution that we're living through changes the nature of reality. Now, of course, we can talk about why that is the case, and you don't have to get very technical, but I'll finish on one point. Everything that we use as a computer today is based on something that is contrived. What is it? It is something that we refer to as first-order logic. It is something that allows us to communicate. So even though what you hear and the language I speak is more limiting than it is liberating, unless I was a poet or a musician, and I'm not, our language is limited. But we use logic in order to have grid lines so that we can understand each other. And that logic was contrived into the things that we call computers. We use a small set of things, this and that, this or that. And we use that logic and we created, through people like von Neumann and Shannon, these machines that now rule our world. But they are contrived abacuses. The nature of reality at the quantum level disregards that logic. That is what we need to understand. Everything around us, literally everything across the universe, obeys the laws of quantum mechanics. And a quantum computer at some point, apart from doing all the wonderful things that Marcus and Esperanza were talking about, apart from all those wonderful things, we lift the veil on the nature of reality. That is a quantum computer. That's why this is important. And that's why it's an industrial revolution, not a technology.
Yes, let's get an applause because that was fantastic. But the conversation is not over. We're getting an applause because it was really magnificent way of describing it. And I love the way you put it, the nature of zeros and ones. And the way that this is going to, it has been ruling our world, but the reality is a continuum. And I do believe one of the things that you said is, I also want to bring back that the focus on the fact that humanity is such a young thing right now, right? We are at the cusp of something new that will change how we will define ourselves, how we'll define our creations. And I think we are at a door right now. And I can't wait to see what happens because it's only been how many years? 6,000, 7,000 years since we've learned how to write, 12,000 years since we have settled. What is next is absolutely exciting. But I want to bring that conversation to, with this transformation comes this question: is this the door to a utopia or a dystopia?
Can I go back to your thing about the continuum?
Please go ahead.
No, well, that's also the name of my company, Quantinuum, so I have to go back to that. But that was not planted. So I founded something called Cambridge Quantum, and then we merged with a company called Honeywell, and we became Quantinuum. But as you were saying that thing about, you know, the zeros and the ones, so I'm one of those guys who, when I was a little bit younger, I saw Troy, and I saw this magnificent man, what was his name? Brad Pitt, as Achilles. You remember he says nobody's going to remember his name. I don't know if you guys remember that. So when people talk about continuums and discrete sort of differences that have something called the excluded middle, for those of you who are into maths, there's this really ancient idea that a tortoise or a turtle will outrun Achilles. And this is something which is very famous. It's called Zeno's paradox, for those of you who are interested. And basically, the idea is that there's a turtle, and he's, I don't know, 10 meters ahead of Achilles, and Achilles is over here. And in 5 seconds or 1 second, the turtle will be, I don't know, an inch or a centimeter ahead of Achilles, and Achilles will be no closer than he was. And if you keep on doing this, Achilles will never get to the turtle because at every instant of that. Well, we know that life is not like that. Life is continuous. And so Zeno's paradox captures the limits of how we deal with technology. It's why AI doesn't work. It is opaque. It is approximate. And we take great glory out of these vast energy-consuming systems around the world that are controlled by a small number of entities, and it does precisely nothing. I mean, we get very excited by it, but it does nothing. Like a computer is really good at multiplying and dividing and adding, and this is a concatenation of that. And a quantum computer allows us to tap the continuous, which is life. It is life. Now, coming back to Utopia, sorry, I had to come back to that, right?
You have to do that for me.
Yeah, so Utopia, Dystopia. I'm a born optimist. I mean, I grew up in Lancashire in the northwest of England, and I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s, and I have to be optimistic. That is me, right? Everything's half full. I embrace people. I hug everyone. You know, every morning I can't wait to get up. So Utopia every single time. But Utopia with our eyes open. So I think there are many risks, but there are 3 that can be articulated so that we can all hopefully identify with them and in our own way build that path so that the dystopia, which is always a heartbeat away, throughout human history, we kill each other, we exploit each other. So how can, on this occasion, we avoid that? So I don't have the answer, but there are sort of 2 or 3 things, I'm going to choose 3, where that porosity of the boundary is dangerous. So one of them is something my good friend Marcus, who runs possibly one of the coolest companies in Europe on quantum, was mentioning as well. Nation states have decided to close the doors. You look carefully at what's happening in France, in the Netherlands, in the United Kingdom, in China, in Japan, in the United States. There's duplication, there's replication, there's export controls. My company, I have over 500 people. Half of them are in the United States. We're governed by a national security agreement with 14 agencies. In France and in Germany, there are restrictions on what can and can't be done. These things are there, and they are there for a reason. I'm not saying that the reasons themselves are bad, but the consequences of what happens if you pull on this will not be good. Right? So this is something where, in fact, the European flagship, and again, I hope I'm not insulting anybody here, but the European flagship project should be one that unites us in quantum, and unfortunately, the national programs are in danger of taking priority. So on this one, Marcus, I think you're absolutely right. So I'm acknowledging you over there. See, he's sitting over there. He's very shy. Well, he's not actually. And then the second thing, which I think is related to that, is the dominance of capital that is required to do this. My company has raised and spent almost $1 billion to get to where we are. This is not cheap. If it were, we'd all be doing it. This means that the societies that we live in and depend upon have a decision-making mechanism for allocating resource. And we have yet to encounter those bad times. So that's a clear and present danger as well. This will not be cheap. That's why you have national programs. And that's why this has been largely beyond venture capital. My company has not 1 penny of venture capital, not one. Now, there are many companies that do, and that's great. That's up to them. But this thing is not cheap. Now, How do you allocate resource? The last point. Well, of course, people ultimately. And so in my company, we've got a program. We're working with Trieste and we're working with the UNDP so that developers in Sao Paulo and Calcutta and Manila and Bangkok and Lagos and all over the world, and not just in Barcelona or Cambridge, which is where I'm from, or the United States, can participate in developing those core algorithms that actually matter. There are not more than 3 algorithms at the moment today. You can ignore anybody who tells you otherwise because they either don't know or they're lying. That next breakthrough, the equivalent of Shor's algorithm, the thing about crypto, is as likely to come from some kid who today is 5 years old and living somewhere that we can't even imagine. And we need to get to him or her. That is way more important. And that's why I think it's Utopia, because I think we will, because sorry, last point. Are we finished? Are we out of time? 3 minutes. Okay, last point. So most of my company is less than half my age. I'm 60. So less than half my age. They're like 26 or something. And the thing that really, really excites me is that they will not tolerate what I did. In 1995 and 1996, we messed up. We messed up. When the internet came, we didn't give a shit. We didn't care. We allowed the pursuit of momentary profit to create these behemoths. You know, Surveillance Capital, Shazana Zuboff. There's so many people now. I mean, not just me. This generation will not allow that. And that's why I'm so excited by what we're doing now.
Thank you so much for that. And I know we've got 3 minutes, but I really need to ask you this question. It is 2040, and you will see this sprinkled around us a lot at PuzzleX. 2050 is too far away for us to imagine, perhaps. 2030, it's too near. 2040, we put that 2040 milestone, and we want to think, what does 2040 look like in a world where quantum is integrated, implemented? And we've got 2 minutes.
You know, I have a policy never to answer questions that I don't have the answer to. That is my standard policy. I cannot answer that question. But I knew you were going to ask me, so I want to at least be respectful. You know, Zina, I got 2 minutes and 15. So I'm going to use 20 seconds of this to say something that's not scripted. Zina, I only met you. This whole bloody event, the whole thing, the bravery to look at something and look at societal impact and not just the narrow technology deserves credit. And for you to even ask that question of me, what do I know, is something that I respect, and I'm going to answer it in the next 40 seconds. But first of all, I want to acknowledge your bravery and thank you for doing what you do, and thank you again for asking me. Yeah, look, I'm going to focus on one thing. It is my view that language is quantum native, and this has now been proved by a brilliant physicist and computer scientist called Bob Kuka. So what does that mean? So up until now, when we think about quantum computers, we think about material discovery, because quantum and quantum simulation are the 2 nearest neighbors, and they allow us to enter that world and build materials from the bottom up. But we've discovered so is language. There is no computer. There's no collection of computers. There's not a planet full of computers that understands what I'm saying now or what Zina and I just discussed. By 2040, it is likely that a quantum computer, which is built on a quantum circuit gate-based system, I don't know whether it's going to be superconducting or trapped ions, will understand what we say. That's scary. That has never, ever happened. And current language models are useless. If you don't believe me, listen to Noam Chomsky. We're good at text to speech. We're good at recognition. they don't understand. And they certainly don't understand more, satire, jokes, or influence. I'm 10 seconds. Slow that thing down. Uh, so I think by 2040, of all the other things that will happen that are magnificent, I think the likelihood is that there will be devices that actually understand human language because of the nature of language and the fact that they can be converted into quantum circuits. I finished.
Wow, you finished right on time. This is magnificent. Beyond the conversation we had, this is fantastic. I know that we're out of time, but I want one word from you. If you could describe quantum in one word, how would you describe it?
Life enhancing.
Oh, fantastic. We'll end it on that note. Thank you so much, Ilyas.